Leaders of the Republican Party are pretty upset that efforts to highlight corruption, dark money, and politics are actually pretty popular. Who knew? So now, according to a leaked call between a senior policy advisor to Mitch McConnell, Senate Minority Leader, oh, it sounds good, doesn't it? Senate Minority Leader, as well as members of prominent conservative groups. In this recording of the call obtained by the New Yorker, conservative political operatives were upset that H.R. 1, known as the For the People Act, which expands voting rights, has wide bipartisan support. It turns out, like I said, Americans like it when people are able to vote and vote easier. And not only that, but to challenge some of the corruption in our government. So that's, of course, what Republicans take biggest, the biggest problem with. As much as they don't like voting, I've talked about that constantly on the show, how they don't want more people to vote. That's because they tend to lose when more people get involved in the political process. But now they're after something that looks even worse for them. They particularly took issue with provisions within the bill that would require disclosure of dark money donors. Dark money donors, which they think could harm Republicans in particular. Gee, I wonder why that is. I mean, could it be that Republican voters also hate it that their politicians might be owned by big business and big donors, big corporations, and don't actually serve them? Weird. Kyle McKenzie, research director for the Koch brothers-backed Stand Together. Oh, I love that. Says that the most worrisome part about the wide support for the bill is that conservatives were actually as supportive as the general public when they read the neutral description of the bill, according to the New Yorker's Jen Mayer. Instead, McKenzie recommended Republicans focus on killing the bill within Congress because it's incredibly difficult to sway voters against it. Don't let the voters get this piece of legislation. Why? Because we want to hide our donors from them. Of course. Now, look, one thing I think we can agree with Republican voters, right? So when I go after Republicans, I'm going after mainly the Republicans in power, congressmen, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Mitch McConnell, Ted Cruz, these odious pieces of shit that are in power, and they're passing things that generally are against not only the material. Not only against their own constituents and being able to make the material conditions for their lives better, but also everyone else. And so I go after those people. But the voters themselves, Republican voters got some issues, right? But generally, I tend to think that it's more, okay, you've got a lot of disinformation on the right. You've got a media bubble on the right that caters only to the worst, most extreme, conditions. And they've got the money, they've got the megaphone. And also there are people that are racist, and there are people that have these misconceptions about trans people, gay people, etc. And the good thing here is that there are ways to pull people out of that. I've seen this happen. I've seen people that were able to change their mind. They used to be conservative. Now they're more progressive. Now they're a little bit more liberal. That's wonderful. That's what we want to do. We want people to change. One of the problems that I have right now with the purity out, everybody trying to out pure each other on the left here, is that there's no room for the people who want to escape the right wing to come to the left, to become a leftist, to embrace more socialistic ideals, or at least more SOCDEM ideals, because these people get, oh, you said this 7 years ago, you are now canceled. No, I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that. If you've changed your beliefs and you're a better person for it, or you want to become a better person, we should welcome you into the left. But anyway, so now, again, one thing that we do have in common is actually some policy proposals. And also the fact that we don't like it when big corporations and wealthy donors buy off our politicians. And I've went over some of the polls before. I actually did so yesterday. Wealth taxes are actually more popular among Republicans than you would think. 53% of Republican voters support a wealth tax. This is like an Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders kind of piece of legislation. That's great. That's a slight majority. Polls going back 10 years or more show that Americans have always thought that big corporations and wealthy donors have too much influence in politics. And it's true. You go back to that Princeton study where essentially the United States is an oligarchy, where you have a very small amount of people at the top at their needs, because they're incredibly wealthy, their needs are considered way before the needs of the constituents. The only time that regular people are represented is when their material interests align with that of the wealthy, and you don't see that happen. Generally, it's more on social issues. But when it comes to economic issues, the country is deeply conservative because right now conservative ideology is all about cutting taxes for the rich and cutting regulations on corporations. And so it turns out that you have conservative voters that are like, no, I'm not in favor of that. I'm not in favor of this corruption. I'm not in favor of this kind of stuff. And unfortunately, they get easily redirected into blaming government, blaming liberals, blaming Hollywood, et cetera, et cetera. And so, interestingly enough, the newest iteration of this is now expressed against social media companies, big tech, right? And they think, oh, these tech companies, Facebook, YouTube, whatever, they are too political. No, they're not. But understand that does show that conservatives have issues with corporate influence in politics, although for, of course, different reasons. A lot of them think the companies are too liberal now with their values. And it's kind of hilarious because corporations have no ideology whatsoever. They're essentially profit-making machines. These companies, they're going to do whatever it takes to make a profit. And now it turns out that being more socially liberal is a way for them to make more money, because it turns out we've actually won the culture wars. Yeah, I know. Look, conservatives keep fighting this culture war every day, but we've actually won. We've already won. And what we see, of course, is now conservatives doing a counterculture. Oh, that, they're going after cancel culture, for example, because it's a real counterculture move. Oh, I can't believe we're being canceled by the liberals. What about Dr. Seuss? Lil Nas X with the Satan sneakers and all this ridiculous stuff. That's what they talk about. They don't give a damn about. And by the way, you tune to Fox News. It's essentially what they're always talking about. WAP and all that stuff. What is it?
Wet ass P word.
Ben Shapiro. It's all he talks about is basically these social issues, because they don't have anything to fall back on. And it's the thing, of course, that really riles people up, because they are in the losing side of this. So we've won the culture wars, but corporations, just because they're quote unquote woke, doesn't actually mean that they're progressive. No, these companies at the same time of being socially liberal are actually, they give money, massive donations to Republican congressmen, because guess what? They want less regulations and less taxes. So what they're doing is that they play both sides to their own benefit. Want more customers? They'd be more accepting of gay and trans people. But they also want those, those sweet handouts, these government goodies. And so, that's why they give to Republicans, who love giving them tax cuts and donations. And so I think we need to get rid of all political donations from, corporations, unions, whatever. Just get rid of all the money in politics. We should publicly finance all elections, ensure political candidates have all equal footing and equal time to make their case on publicly on TV and on the internet. I think that would solve quite a bit of problems. But back to H.R. 1. Now, the message, according to the Republican operatives, that the legislation fought back against the influence of billionaire donors was especially hard to campaign against. Not even attaching the phrase cancel culture to the bill by portraying it as silencing conservative voices worked, Meyer wrote. That's awesome. So not even the calls of, oh my God, cancel culture worked at all. That's awesome and hilarious. But they did find something that did work, though, unfortunately. McKinsey did say that if they told voters that the American Civil Liberties Union, the ACLU, and Planned Parenthood were against the legislation, they could sway them the Republicans' way. So now that's nothing but lies. The ACL only opposes part of the legislation. Planned Parenthood is in full support of it, the New Yorker reported. So basically their plan is just to lie about it. We don't have the truth on our side. We don't really have an argument. So we're just going to lie about it. That's it. That's what we do. After all, they think their voters are idiots. They'll believe in the disinformation, and unfortunately, they do a lot. And of course, the reason they want to lie to their voters is all about money, essentially. Steve Donaldson, a senior policy advisor to McConnell, also noted the minority leader's concern about how the provisions to increase donor transparency in the For the People Act would affect fundraising. When it comes to donor privacy, I can't stress enough how quickly things could get out of hand. Oh, you mean people could actually see who bought you off? Oh, well, we wouldn't want that, would they? Oh, no. Look, these donors want to be anonymous for, I think, a couple of reasons. For one, they don't want to be called out and canceled by the public for supporting odious politicians. They don't want an AOC or a Bernie Sanders tweet calling them out for supporting terrible people like Ted Cruz. Okay? They are legit afraid of the social media power of the left. And that's, of course, another example of how we've won the culture wars. When they are afraid of a tweet from AOC, that's something important. Now, the donors want to desperately hide themselves, and Republican politicians, being the good little servant bitches they are, keep trying to kill the bill that, for the most part, is actually really, really good. It enhances actual democracy, makes it easier for people to vote, and it's driving Republicans crazy because, again, they don't believe in democracy. They want less people voting because their ideas suck. Not only are their ideas deeply unpopular, they're just bad, which is why you never have Republicans actually talk about their real ideas. It's just nebulous phrases like, oh, it's freedom, individual liberty. And that's it. All right. But these ideas, these policy positions don't work for the vast majority of the American people. They work only for the very top. And most people realize that they're being screwed as a result of this by big business, by the rich, by, ironically, big tech, and by the government, who has also been controlled mostly by the rich. As the article correctly points out, influencing politicians through dark money is a tactic favored by groups like the fossil fuel industry, who right now are getting billions and billions of dollars through subsidies. Why are we subsidizing the richest corporations on the planet, who are, by the way, ruining the planet? There's no reason for it. Billionaire Charles Koch and his late brother in particular were instrumental in constructing far-reaching dark money networks across the country. Out of the top 10 dark money groups that have spent the most since 2008, 9 are conservative or right-leaning, according to a list compiled by Open Secrets. And while both parties benefit from dark money groups, which they absolutely do, only Democrats are putting forward H.R. 1. In fact, every Democrat in the House voted in favor of this. Now, of course, now it goes to the Senate, where it's going to run into Republicans and Joe Manchin. Because Joe Manchin's not in favor of this. But Joe Manchin doesn't really count as a Democrat. All right, he ain't nobody's liberal. And so there you go. And what they want to do, what the Republicans and Joe Manchin want to do, is prevent the American people from actually being served by the government, along with Kirsten Sinema, of course. And they just can't figure out, the only problem is they just can't figure out how to get people to hate the bill as much as they do. If you enjoyed this video, please give us a like and share with your friends. You can subscribe and help out the channel by becoming a patron. It's patreon.com/Jeff Waldorf, or you can become a channel member as well by hitting the join button below.